Right. Well, I am pleased to be with you guys today, and I am going to provide an overview of natural gas, starting really in the United States overall, and then also then really drilling into Georgia and how we really ensure that the natural gas market is well supplied here. And there's so many reasons for us to want to do that. Natural gas, you guys have probably heard from many this notion that natural gas is a transitional fuel. And I'm here to tell you that it's really a foundational fuel. It's foundational to our economy. It's foundational to having a truly well-functioning energy system that includes the power that we need to run our economy as well. So we'll jump right in today and first kind of hit just a little bit about who we are. And I just want to leave you with one thing with Gas South. When we're an energy marketer, we're a natural gas marketer, what a marketer does is it really connects producers of natural gas with the consumers of natural gas. And we utilize third-party infrastructure, interstate pipelines that we talked about. We're going to talk some more about those, and distribution systems such as Atlanta Gas Lights here in Georgia to be able to serve customers of all shapes and sizes. And we serve customers ranging from the individual homeowner here in Georgia all the way up to power plants across a 16-state service area that you see there. One of the things I'm really proud of is that we are owned by an EMC. So Annalisa talked about the importance of the electric cooperatives. We're owned by Cobb EMC, and that means that we're owned by the members of Cobb EMC, the homeowners and the businesses that happen to be in that Northwest Metro portion of Georgia. And we're very philanthropic. We give back 5% of our profits to children in need as part of our purpose of being a fuel for good. So jumping right in, I want to talk a little bit today first about really how the gas market works. And it really is about supply, demand, and that connecting infrastructure that we talked about. That connecting infrastructure specifically exists of things like interstate pipelines, local distribution systems, and storage facilities, which are extremely important for a well-functioning natural gas market. So let's hit the supply side first. And this is a this is an extremely good picture. Our supply in the United States of natural gas is ample and it's growing. Now, how can you grow a finite resource? Well, through innovation, through technology, through hydraulic fracturing, all the things that have led to additional finds over the last 20 years or so that have completely transformed the supply side in our business. So here's what that looks like. And you can see that over the course of these last 50 years or so, we have made huge strides. Back in 1980, many felt that we had about 48 years of natural gas left. Kim, you probably remember those days. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that'll take me through my career, but probably not my kids' careers. Well, the picture has changed dramatically. And you can see a lot of that is because of the discovery of shale resources, new economic sources of natural gas that could really be relied upon for low cost, highly reliable supplies. And today, we have more reserves proven than we had back in 1980, way more, even though we've been consuming natural gas that whole way. And today, most analysts would say we probably have about at least 80 years of resource that should take us through. And quite honestly, it could be a lot more as we continue to innovate, as we continue to find additional sources, not just in the United States, but all around the world. So the supply picture, extremely optimistic, extremely strong. Now, on the demand side, and you guys heard a little bit about this, it's accelerating and it's really dynamic. And by dynamic, I mean it's changing and it's changing fast. So how? Well, here you see the last 3 decades, 2015, 2025, and 2035 from a forecast standpoint. And the end uses of natural gas have changed significantly. So you can see back in 2015, we had power and industrial sources really making up the lion's share. You've got residential, you got some commercial, and you have some other uses in there as well. By 2025, a lot of growth, about 4% a year. Now, contrast that to about 0.8% population growth per year in the United States. Demand for natural gas is growing way faster than what we're seeing in terms of the overall population. A couple of big sources of growth there. One was power, the coal to gas switching that the last panel talked about. A lot of facilities did move from coal to gas over time. The reasons for that are economics, but also environmental, of course. Gas has about 50% of the CO2 emissions of coal, and you actually see about a 90% plus reduction in other air pollutants, particulate matter, SO2, NOx, and the like. The other big source of growth has been LNG exports, and you see that at the top in the blue. Back in 2015, we were importing natural gas from places like Qatar and Oman and elsewhere to be able to meet our needs. Those terminals, including one in Elba Island in Georgia, have all been turned around, and additional terminals have been built because we are now in a position of exporting massive amounts of natural gas to other countries, Europe, Japan, the Caribbean, and elsewhere, that help them to fuel their economies. So that area of growth has been really, really significant. You can see that there. Over the next 10 years, expect more of the same. So LNG terminals, we're looking at expanding that capacity in the United States by about 100% by 2035, so a doubling of that export capacity, and that's reflected in the number that you see there. Power will also continue to utilize more and more natural gas, and a lot of that is not going to come from coal to gas switching anymore. Now it's really just that need for more computing power from data centers, as well as electric vehicles and other things that are certainly going to drive more and more demand growth there. And industrial growth is also really important, and you can see that in the green. It continues to be such an important part of our economy, and sometimes one that's overlooked, that direct use of natural gas that helps to really run our factories, to help us to produce products, to dry, to all the heating processes. Fertilizer factories all rely on natural gas, and it's really an essential input into what they do. It's possible that by 2035, actually, also the LNG will even increase more than this. It could overtake industrial usage in the coming decade, depending on how things go. All right, next, if you look at the power side specifically, so now we're drilling down into power. And the last panelist really talked about the importance of natural gas, and the majority of electric generation runs on natural gas today, around 40%, and that's expected to continue even as we continue to see that demand growth for power generation. Importantly, you can see that wind and solar actually have really grown and are expected to continue to grow. All of these forecasts, by the way, do contemplate the changes that the current administration has made. So these are really fresh and relevant. They would have looked a little different a couple of years ago, of course. But what's interesting is you still see solar, wind continuing to increase because of reasons that they're an important part of the overall mix, that all the above strategy is really, really critical. And what's also important to know is that natural gas pairs so well with renewables, because you need to have that source of dispatchable electricity generation, and that is best met by a flexible fuel source and flexible plants that run on natural gas. And so that kind of dispatchable power needs to be paired with the more intermittent sources like wind and solar to really make the energy economy hum. All right, the next piece, so we talked about supply, we talked about demand. Now let's talk about this connecting infrastructure. And unfortunately, here is where this is the weakest link, if you will, in the system. And it is insufficient and it is challenging currently. Why? Well, I think this slide really tells us at a high level why. So gas demand has increased by, as I mentioned, about 50% or so since 2013. But look what's happened with the infrastructure, the pipeline infrastructure to deliver natural gas. It's only grown by 26%. Big gap, right, between what's required and what can be transported. Storage is an even bleaker picture. And storage is really important because storage allows you to inject gas at times of lower demand and to be able to pull that gas out when demand is extremely high. It actually really complements those interstate pipelines to be able to not have to overbuild them because you can have storage that can be relied upon during times of high demand, those really cold winter days, right? You don't want to overbuild your infrastructure for just 7, 10 days a year. You want to be able to have other ways to meet that peak demand. Storage does a great job of it. Unfortunately, extremely hard to develop these types of facilities, only a 2% increase in storage capacity since 2013. So putting all of that together, we do have a little bit of a bumpy ride. And I'm really talking about this more in the United States overall. So we've got a very robust supply side. We've got demand side that's growing. And we have an infrastructure, though, the connecting infrastructure that's the most challenged. Now, the good news here is that in Georgia, we're relatively better off than a lot of other places in the country. I think it was, Kim may have mentioned that it's virtually impossible, or maybe it was Annalisa, to get pipeline infrastructure built in a lot of other parts of the country, whether that's interstate pipelines traversing those states or the local distribution. Either case, you're going to have some real challenges, that bananas sort of attitude, but also sometimes it's just a politically fraught conversation that exists in a lot of parts of the country. I think in Georgia, we're relatively well positioned. We see the need for an all of the above strategy and have felt like this is something that we need to do to be able to run our economy effectively. So now let's dive in a little bit to Georgia specifically. And gas distribution in Georgia, how does it really work? Well, we have 3 primary gas utilities in the state, 3 types of entities. One is Atlanta Gas Light. That's where about 80% of the meters lie, where about 80% of the consumption is. Liberty Utilities is in Columbus and Gainesville. They're actually owned by Algonquin, and they have about 60,000 or so customers. That's a fully integrated model on the retail side, in contrast to AGL, which has a competitive market, of course, where marketers like us have the ability to serve customers. And then we have about a little over 300,000 meters that are parts of municipally owned gas systems, many of which are served by the Gas Authority, and they help to secure the supplies for those entities. Each of the models is different. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the AGL model because I think that's really unique to us and something that has served us well in our state. So here's how the AGL, the Atlanta Gas Light market structure works. And you could see this is a real team-based effort to ensure that gas gets from where it's being produced to where it's being consumed. And we have roles as natural gas marketers. There are about 13, 14 of us in total that are certified to serve customers in the state of Georgia. And of course, we use the AGL infrastructure commonly. All of us use that. And we really rely on AGL for a lot of the services to be able to deliver that natural gas. So the gas marketers, such as us, we're responsible for doing the purchasing of the natural gas from suppliers. We then arrange for that gas to be transported through the interstate pipelines. The 2 big pipelines that serve Georgia are Transco and Southern Natural Gas. They ensure the safe delivery to city gates, to city systems, such as AGL's. They also plug into the city-owned systems that we talked about. The AGL distribution system, so AGL is responsible for operating, maintaining that system, expanding that system, and they have city gates where we are responsible for delivering gas into different pool group areas, and that flows gas to different parts of Georgia. And then we ultimately are responsible for making sure that that gas gets to where it needs to go with an AGL system. We have to follow those instructions to the T. And then lastly, you've got the end users. And AGL is responsible for going out and doing the service orders on premise. They're, of course, maintaining and operating the system. They're reading the meters. You'll probably see AGL techs out there. All of these functions that AGL does really properly remain as a single company doing that. I don't think anybody would ever want to have 14 different companies building pipelines right through our neighborhoods. So AGL does a fantastic job of this. We serve customers in some 16 different states, and I will tell you that AGL provides the best level of service. It's the best run gas utility amongst all of them, and I don't just say that because Walt is here. It's true. It is a world-class utility operation, and we are extremely lucky to have Atlanta Gas Light as the company that is responsible for that delivery. We then enroll the customer. We serve them on rate plans. I'm sure many of you all have chosen a rate plan over time. We arrange for your service to be established. If you move into a new house, AGL comes in, they light the pilot lights, they open the meter, and we're responsible as natural gas marketers for sending the bills and collecting the money, a portion of which goes to Atlanta Gas Light for their distribution charges, which are fully regulated by the commission. I want to say one thing about deregulation. I hate that word because we're not really deregulated in the natural gas market. It's highly regulated. Everything is overseen by the Public Service Commission. And it's not just AGL's rates that we have to collect on their behalf. It's also the terms of service that we provide to customers. And we are held highly, highly accountable for doing a great job in serving customers. And when we don't do a great job, we hear about it, right, Trish? That is definitely something that we see on a daily. Oh, there's Trish over there on a regular basis. So we want to make sure that we are very, very focused on doing the right thing by our customers. All right, so a couple of things that we do have to overcome, though, in Georgia. One is we lack natural gas production. And you can see where a lot of the gas comes from. These basins are nowhere near the state of Georgia. It's just geologic, right, for us. And that creates some challenges for us. How do we solve for that? In a couple of ways. One is through a very extensive interstate pipeline network. It was talked about how we really benefit from a lot of the decisions that were made that came way, way before us. Well, the investments that were made in systems like Transco, like Southern Natural Gas, East Tennessee Pipeline, Florida Gas Transmission, all of which are interconnected to other systems that actually feed into Georgia, is extremely important. And we're actually really well served as a market compared to a lot of other parts in the country which may rely on just one pipeline and just one supply basin. We have gas coming from the Marcellus Shale, we have gas coming from Texas that can come into Georgia, and that really benefits us as a state. What we also do in Georgia is we invest in pipeline expansions. So anytime that Transco, Sonat, others are thinking about an expansion of their systems, we're at the table. Sometimes that's through Atlanta Gas Light and through their capacity supply plan, which all of the marketers participate in and is overseen by the Public Service Commission. Some of that is part of the integrated resource plans that Georgia Power and others have as they kind of think about ways that we can ensure that gas supplies are sufficient for our power needs as well. So all of that really leads to us being always future focused, thinking about the ways that we can ensure that the natural gas market here is well supplied for direct use as well as for power generation. And you can see some of the decisions that we've made even recently as an industry with PSC support have led to significant expansion of that pipeline capacity into our state, which is so important to be able to meet the future needs of our state. There are a lot of other states around the country that are starving their natural gas companies of the fuel that they need. A lot of that is going to be policy driven. It's going to be a move towards trying to electrify everything. Here in Georgia, we've taken a much more balanced approach to that. We realize that there's a lot of value in continuing to encourage end uses, as well as to look to natural gas to pick up some of that power generation volume that we know is coming and is coming right now in the future. Okay, a second big challenge that we have is we have no storage. It's, again, geologic in nature. You can see where storage exists. It's nowhere extremely close to us. It does exist in Louisiana, in Alabama, in parts of Texas, and the capacity supply plan, again, that AGL drives, looks at ways that we can access some of those storage facilities that you see in blue on here, and we contract for those resources. The marketers like us are ultimately responsible for paying for the value of this storage and this capacity. We also get a pro rata share of the benefits based on our respective market shares. The number of customers or the volumes that we're moving into Georgia end up, dictating how much cost we have of that, but also how much of that space we each get to utilize. It's always an important trade-off between reliability and cost for these sorts of things. But we are always looking at ways to make sure that we are well supplied from a storage standpoint. And these are underground caverns, spent aquifers, other formations around the country that lend themselves to being used for natural gas storage. And we handle storage one other way in Georgia, which is really innovative, and I think we've become a real leader in the country in terms of above ground liquefied natural gas storage. So this helps us to adjust for the fact that we don't have in this state geologic formations, but we can build our own. We build them above ground. We liquefy natural gas, which densifies it to the tune of 600 to 1 compared to the gaseous variety. And that allows us to be able to store gas for uses during those peak days. And you can see here that we have done, as an industry, of course, these are projects that AGL manages on our behalf, that we can meet up to 37% of the design day needs. And what design day is that's what the system is designed to do on the coldest days of the year. So about 40% of that demand can be met just through these facilities over the course of about a 7-day period. Coming back to sort of Kim's comments on reliability and the need to make sure the energy is showing up when it's needed most, this is an extremely important part of our energy system. And AGL recently expanded their facility up in Cherokee County, and you can see it here. You see the shiny LNG tank that's behind the older one is going online later this year and will provide a significant additional capacity for this really, really important storage requirement. And then I want to leave you with a couple of last thoughts. One is natural gas planning and really system operation in general, making sure it works for consumers, is a team sport here in Georgia. And I think this is one of the things that really makes our state special. We have extraordinary collaboration and cooperation that does not exist in a lot of other states. We serve customers, I mentioned, 16 or 17 different states. Nothing works like it does here in Georgia, where you have all of these different entities at the table looking at ways that we ensure that Georgia is a well-supplied market. And everybody has a place in that. And you can see just some of the things that we need to all be thinking about and ensuring happen to make sure that our state continues to have the type of success that we've had. And it matters for a lot of reasons: affordability, reliability, cost. It also matters for economic development. And just a little bit of a case study here is a facility down in Valdosta, Georgia. Our first glass bottle plant that was built in the United States since the 1980s. It came online a few years ago. And it came online in part because they looked at Georgia as the place to do this. Now, some of that's transportation infrastructure, some of it is workforce, but a big part of it in this case was natural gas. Access to supplies, the ability to fix their rate for a long term, which was really necessary for them to get the type of financing that they needed to make this happen. And we should never overlook the importance of natural gas to ensure a robust economy in a place where people want to build new facilities and expand their existing operations. And this plant is actually supported by an additional LNG resource that's being developed currently by AGL down in that part of the state. So last slide, here's what I'd like to leave you guys with. We talked about some challenges here in our state. We say we don't have in-state production. We don't have that underground storage. We've got these rising demand pressures. These are all challenges, certainly for our natural gas industry. But the great news is in Georgia, we have some really, really great responses. We're contracting for pipeline and storage capacity. We're looking to build our own through those above ground LNG storage facilities. And Very importantly, we continue to stay highly coordinated on the planning side, making sure that the needs of all of the industry participants are well met and well balanced. Lastly, the result, you can see we've got a exceptionally well-supplied market. We have moderated price volatility. Now, our gas prices are not the lowest in the country. We are far enough away from some of those supply basins that we're not going to be able to match the types of prices that may exist in Pennsylvania or Ohio, where they're much, much closer to the source of supply, right? But we're much better off than many other places. The Carolinas, Virginia, a lot of the states that we compete with directly, those customers typically face higher prices overall and much higher volatility because they're not as well situated as we are here in Georgia. And that is a true economic competitive advantage for us that causes the hourglasses of the world to choose Georgia over some of those other states. And that's something we have to fiercely defend and continue to invest in the infrastructure that enables us to be able to enjoy that strength. That's everything I have today, guys. I know I'm keeping you between a lunch here, so I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and look forward to the tabletop conversations that I know we'll all be having here over lunchtime. Thank you.